If you're a woman between the ages of 35 and 50, this episode is for you. Menopause impacts over 50% of the population, but there's so much stigma around and there's so much misinformation around this topic. Today, we're going to change that. Learning what to expect during the perimenopause and menopause stage of your life can help you feel more empowered and in control of your health and well-being. With almost 50% of your life spent in the perimenopause and menopausal stage, isn't it time to have this conversation? Hi, I'm Dr. Nafisa Sikandri, a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in anxiety-based disorders. I created the Mental Health Break podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you prioritize your mental health. Mental illness can cost you time and money. Ignoring your symptoms will only make the problems worse. Taking time out of your busy day to dedicate to improving your mental health can lead to long-term health and wellness. In this podcast, you'll learn tips, tricks, and proven strategies to help you regain control of your life, all while prioritizing your mental health. If you want to improve your life, regain control of your mental health, and feel empowered, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today's episode is proudly brought to you by the second annual Mental Health Reset Conference happening on Saturday, January 11th, 2025 in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. Join us for an inspirational and fun-filled day where you'll learn how to improve your mental and physical health from a holistic and integrative perspective. Meet wonderful, like-minded individuals and leave feeling empowered and confident about your health and wellness goals for 2025. Space is limited, so register now at drsikandri.com/MHRattend. Today, I'll be speaking to a menopause specialist, so let me briefly introduce her before I bring her on. With over 30 years of dedicated experience in women's healthcare, Susan Corbett has passionately supported women through challenges related to hormone imbalance, obesity, thyroid issues, and sexual dysfunction. Susan believes that every woman's unique body deserves a personalized treatment plan tailored to help them look and feel their best. As a nurse practitioner, she has specialized training and holds certification in female hormone management with the North American Menopause Society. She also has focused her education on obesity management, sexual dysfunction, and aesthetics. Susan is committed to providing the highest level of care. She combines her extensive knowledge with the latest cutting-edge treatments to ensure the best outcomes for her patients. Hi, Susan. Thank you so much for joining me on the Mental Health Break podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. This is a great subject we're going to discuss today.
I'm so excited to talk to you because I've been really diving deep into the whole topic of menopause. And one of the reasons I found you was I was listening to an interview with Marie Forleo, and I think her name is, Dr. Marie Claire Haver. And She was talking about how important it is to find somebody that's certified by the Menopause Society. So I Googled you, searched you, and you happen to be local to me. So I'm so excited to have you here and for people to know you. So can you tell us a little bit about what is it that you do, what got you interested in what you do, and a little bit about the business that you have?
Absolutely. So I'm a nurse practitioner, midwife, and I've been doing women's care for just over 25 years. As I've kind of gotten older myself, I've fallen into the interest of women regarding perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. It's a whole medical, personal, emotional, mental health issue of itself, and it takes a special provider. I think being part of that certification by the North American Menopause Society is very important to have that exceptional training and education to be able to care for those clients. Being amongst those women has certainly made it easier for me to relate to those women.
Yes, and the sad thing is, from what I'm hearing from a lot of very well-known, renowned researchers, how little doctors know about the process of menopause. I myself recently had my brain scan just for the fun. It was for the fun of it, for the experience of it. But I was shocked at how little the doctor knew about what was happening with my own brain in terms of the changes that happen. So something that I've recently been reading a lot about is from, I think her name is Dr. Lisa Mosconi. So
Uh-huh.
Dr. Lisa Mosconi is a neurologist, and she's written a book about the menopausal brain and how there are so many shifts that happen. Like there's our brain shrinks at different points in our lives. Like for puberty, it shrinks. During pregnancy, it shrinks. And during perimenopause, it shrinks. So when this woman sees my brain and says, oh, there's some shrinkage there, of course, my brain is going to shrink a certain way. But what the beauty of what Dr. Mosconi's research was telling us is that there's a rewiring that happens during these points, like at puberty, at pregnancy. Yes, our brain, we all know that our brain shrinks after having a baby. And then at puberty, all the chaos that happens with the teenage brain, right? And then
Right.
pause. But there's a reason for it, and there's a productivity and a efficiency that happens as a result. So just tell me, I mean, you're the expert on menopause, but these are things that I'm getting really excited about, to not be so down about, oh my, there's so much shame and stigma around this topic. So talk a little bit about all of that, and what are your experiences dealing with the women that you deal with?
Right. So a big part of menopause and even perimenopause does involve, quote, quote, the brain or cognitive changes that women experience. A lot of it comes with the deficit or deficiencies in estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, but also include those hormones that people don't recognize as dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, norepinephrine. And so we often will say, women will complain that I just feel like I'm in a brain fog. I don't think acutely as I did before. I struggle with remembering things, and it's frustrating. You know what you want to say, you know what you want to do, and it makes you feel a little bit crazy, and you kind of act a little bit crazy sometimes out of frustration. Also, with those lower hormone levels, mood changes are very prevalent. More irritability, more anxiety, you're less tolerable to stress, and it can be very life altering.
Well, it's a very vulnerable stage, just like with puberty. A lot of chaos and emotional upheaval can happen around puberty. There are a lot of women that can be at risk for postpartum depression after having a baby because of all of these neurological changes. And then around perimenopause, like you said, there's so many psychological things that take place, and a lot of women go to their doctors and they're either dismissed. And that's the shocking thing, that how few doctors actually know what's happening with a woman during this time. They're either dismissed, or they're like, oh, you just be put on some antidepressants or some anti-anxiety medication, when really it's not just a hormonal issue with their ovaries. It's a hormonal issue, like you said, with their brain
Right,
as well. And
right.
that's what needs to be addressed, instead of here's some medication, just call it a day. And a lot of women just like don't know what is going on, and it's so frustrating.
Exactly, exactly. And part of that is the is that they really don't know how to treat it. So to delve into it would be a lack of, having to say to them, I don't know what to do. And that's uncomfortable for physicians to say. What they know what to say is, if you bring up the word anxiety or I'm feeling a little depressed or different, then that gives them, I know what to do about that. And they always go to or revert to, that's anxiety, that's depression, let me treat that. And to address a hormonal issue, when they don't know how to treat it, and then say, I don't know what to do, and they haven't really educated themselves or got that specific training, creates a lot of frustration and anxiety for them, actually. And then that leaves both provider and patient kind of at a loss.
Right. I was listening to Drew Barrymore talk about how she's going through perimenopause and her daughter's going through puberty. That's exactly what happened to me.
Yes.
That was not a good combination, where she's
Right.
going through her emotional issues, I'm going through my own emotional issues. And it's just, you're constantly angry, you're constantly frustrated. And that increases your cortisol, that impacts your sleep, and makes you more depressed and makes you irritable. It just, all of that is a huge transition. And if you don't know what's happening, then
Right.
it can feel very, very depressing. I mean, marriages fall apart around this age,
This
right?
is right. It's really hard on relationships. Again, if we talk about physicians not understanding, certainly the general population lacks education, understanding. Men would not have any contact with education or information. I have to tout NAMS again, the North American Menopause Society has great information that's available to the public, and you just click on that patient education. It's easy. It's absorbable information. You can get at least some idea about what's going on. A big part of any hormonal time for a woman is just validation. I don't know what else to do, but I validate where you're at. Tell me what I can do to help you. I may not understand, but I can help if you share with me.
Right. And so you help women during this time because one of the biggest complaints, or so many complaints like hot flashes, uh,
Mhm.
the memory issues, brain fog, cognitive decline, sleep issues. There's a lot of different things, weight gain, and you help people with those issues. And you have a clinic, right? So can you tell
I
us a little
do.
bit about what you do and how you help people with those issues?
Right. So I have both training in synthetic, commercial, traditional hormone replacement. And then I also practice bioidentical hormone therapy. And so I'm able to reach all women's needs and what they prefer for their treatment options, but also in alternative treatments as well, like cognitive behavior therapy, yoga, and some of the other things that are so helpful for women. So for me, it's typically quite a bit of information gathering, symptomology, and then we do some lab work. It's pretty involved lab work. Based on that, we look at whether or not we want to, if the patient meets specific criteria, are they a candidate for hormone replacement therapy? And how I can help balance their hormones so that they have at least an optimized feeling of sense of well-being. Symptomology is improved, less hormone hot flashes, better sleep patterns, less irritability, less mood swings. It's not going to be 100%, but certainly we can get 85% improvement in those symptoms.
Well, one of the issues is that this is a new thing for us, right? Like 100 years ago, a lot of women didn't make it that much longer past, they didn't survive that much longer past menopause. And now we're living so much longer. Once somebody said something that we will be in menopause longer than we were and being menstruating.
This is true. You spend half your life in perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause.
Isn't that
So
incredible?
it's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you want to have a thriving brain, a healthy body, and you don't want to, I mean, I've never been one of those people that wants to prolong my life, but I do want to be as healthy as possible until my last day, right? And
Yeah, you
so
want to have a great quality of life, the best you can.
right, right. And so a lot of these things, reducing inflammation, all of these symptoms that are caused by the lack of hormones, and it creates inflammation in our body. It creates, like, literally, it shocks me that our brain not only shrinks, but it uses less energy and it's less active. But at the same time, we can be scared of that, but it becomes more efficient postmenopause as well. Is that can that happen without support with hormones,
Yeah,
or
It's divided in the numbers, and it's about a third. A third of the women, will go through menopause with very few symptoms and really don't need any kind of replacement. Then we have about a third of women who have mild to moderate symptoms. They may have some types of therapies for a limited number of years. And then we have another third, a part of those women that will need life for the rest of their life, therapies, because they do have some really severe, intense, maybe emotional type issues. The hot flashes can go on for years as well as, again, this cognitive issue. And people are surprised at how much and how different things can be with that hormone replacement. People think hormone replacement is always about just estrogen, but no, it includes your progesterone and it includes your testosterone, which is also extremely important for bodily functions.
And being a mental health provider, I'm very interested in the mental health aspect of this phase of our lives. And 50% of the population around the world goes through this. So I don't understand the stigma around this. I don't understand the shame around this. Like, this is, we're all going to go through this. If you're a female that has ovaries, that has a uterus, or maybe you've been forced into menopause because you've had a hysterectomy, or maybe you're going to go through it, and people go through different levels. There are people in their 60s that are still having menstruation. So
yeah, it's just a whole gamut of women doing different things. Speaking about the number of women, you're saying in the US alone, there are 75 million women right now, either perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause. That's an incredible number of women. A number of women who need the mental health services that we're lacking here in the United States, the physician care and services that we need for management, for medication possibly, alternative therapies certainly. It's a big issue and certainly not one that's being tackled very well.
And it saddens me that the majority of them are probably living in shame or suffering in silence and not able to talk about it. And one of the things, like I talked about Dr. Lisa Mosconi and Dr. Mary Claire Haver as being two of the people that are really out there in the media right now talking about this and normalizing this, which I love. But somebody that I've also loved for a long time, who helped me go through my puberty and early 20s with the wisdom, women's bodies, women's wisdom, and then also the wisdom of menopause, is Dr. Christian Northrup. And one thing she talks about is the emotional component, the repressed emotions, the unresolved emotions, the not taking care of ourselves and burning the candle at both ends, and really living a very repressed life up until our 40s. And then bam, perimenopause forces us to address those issues. So there are a lot of women that finally deal with sexual abuse as a child around their 40s, late 30s, 40s, right? And then also, it's a period for us where we don't tolerate BS anymore. We have no tolerance for fake people. We don't have any tolerance for being used and abused. We don't have any. This is another reason a lot of relationships fall apart, because we just no longer have tolerance for any of that. It's almost like a veil is lifted and we get mental clarity about what we're really dealing with. So that's what I love about the wisdom of menopause, and that there is a lot of positives associated with this period, but it also makes us confront the negative neglect that we've lived and how much we've pushed our bodies up until this period. And so maybe that contributes, like you said, to that third of a group of women that need a lot of support because they've neglected themselves for so long. And then all of a sudden they're hit with reality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Unfortunately, it seems to be the women who reach out and the women who are If they don't get the answer or the needs met, they'll go on and find and look for more care and services. But then again, we always run into racial disparities. In fact, the African American population has some of the most prevalent and complicated symptomology, and they rarely reach out, and they suffer. And it's unfortunate, but they often don't speak up for themselves. And I would like to see that change.
Yeah, definitely. They have issues with medical care throughout their lives
Your
because
life.
they get
Yeah,
dismissed, but it's women in general that constantly get dismissed as well. We're always told, and I hate the fact that doctors make it like it's an insult to say it's all in our head. Well, it is in our head. Our brain is literally shrinking.
right.
There's changes
Right.
going on. Our brain is literally getting rewired, but help us understand that and normalize that and don't make us feel like we're crazy because we're going through this transition in our lives.
Right. Or very often, a very typical statement there is out there is that this is natural. This is every woman goes through it. And we know that already. That's very common knowledge. I'm a woman. I know that this is coming and is happening. I almost feel like we need to do the class that we do in 4th or 5th grade. This is what's coming, and you're going to go through puberty. I wish we had a class that you're going to take, or a book that says this is what's going to happen when you're in your mid 30s. And I think that would be a great thing if we had a big class with the video running that says your body's going to change and here's what's going to happen. And I would love to see that, actually.
Well, I think that's why this conversation is so important, is that we need to reduce the stigma to begin with so that we as a group can talk about it. Like, I don't know too many people in my friendship circle or family circle that actually openly talks about that. They might even fake it and pretend that they still are getting their period and not really talk about the fact that, okay, yeah, I've gone through menopause. And
Yes,
the definition of menopause is a year after your very last day of period, right?
that's correct. That is the diagnosis of menopause. No menstrual bleeding for 12 months.
Yeah. And so you can go and have no period for 10 months and then you get one, it starts all over again at that
That's
point,
all
right?
over. That's right. You're so hopeful. And then again, you'll have a cycle and then you have to start over. That's right.
One thing I'm noticing is for some women that have some other health issues is the excessive bleeding, that a lot of women end up getting hysterectomies at this point because they don't know what to do with that excessive bleeding. And some of it could just be due to lack of iron in their body.
Yeah, so that's what happens sometimes when we go through that perimenopausal phase, is certainly those cycle changes. Cycles can get closer together, they can get a little bit further apart, but you'll often notice that they get heavier. They may have more blood clots there, cramping, pain, more fatigue. The iron deficiency comes because they're losing so much blood. Often, surprisingly, women will even need blood transfusions. There is ways to control that bleeding through an endometrial ablation, which is taking care of the uterine lining, IUD, but sometimes just being on the right hormone during that time will balance it so that you're not having such irregularity to your cycle, certainly not as much bleeding. Hysterectomy is a big decision and certainly changes you more than I think women expect it to happen.
Yeah.
Certainly can change you, obviously, physically. It changes the intimacy. And certainly women complain of how their sex life has changed. It feels different to them. Orgasm may not be the same for them.
So I was diagnosed with endometriosis in my mid-20s, and that
Right.
forced me to explore alternative, because I wanted to keep my ovaries in my uterus. I didn't want
Yes.
any of that to affect me. So I really dove into alternative healing methods like acupuncture, herbs. essential oils, castor oil packs. I mean, completely changed my lifestyle, completely changed my diet, really got clean with my diet and focused on exercise. There are certain, I mean, have you noticed that that's necessary for women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s as well to ease the transition to menopause and postmenopause? Because it's not just about putting a Band-Aid on it and just having a quick little fix. It really should be the things that we could get away with in our 20s, we're not going to be able to get away with in our 40s and 50s.
Yeah, absolutely. Most important things that you just mentioned really are you need to stop smoking. You've got to exercise, a really healthy diet, and we've got to manage obesity. Certainly obesity, and I think women are surprised to hear it, increases your risk of breast cancer, uterine cancer, and ovarian cancer. And the number one killer for women is actually cardiovascular disease or heart attacks. Yeah. And that's part of my mission is hormone balance for women, avoid heart attacks and strokes, those cancers I just mentioned, and then dementia for women. And you've got to have those things. It's as you start to transition again and those children are getting a little bit older, that is the time to start focusing on yourself. It's the most important time to get yourself as quote, as healthy as you can. Diet, exercise, a normal weight range. Mm-hmm.
And it includes getting some therapy for past emotional issues and the stress level in your life, because that makes a huge difference in how your body processes these hormones. And so we talked about how, like in your 30s and 40s, you don't tolerate the fakery, the BS in your life anymore. But you might have unresolved trauma from your childhood, from your teens, from your early 20s that you never processed. This is the time to process that, because it's not going to by processing it, it could help ease the transition, because those blocked emotions are contributing to higher cortisol, which makes you more obese, which makes you gain weight, which makes you not sleep well, which makes you have emotional issues, which makes you have relationship issues. So this is the time to really take advantage of that and address these issues by going to therapy, talking to somebody, addressing it in a way that's healing, addressing past wounds and traumas.
Yeah, absolutely. As part of my practice, I mentioned I send forms for women to fill out, and I always send an anxiety form and a depression screening because it is an issue. We talk about cognitive behavior therapy is a great way to help do the education and counseling and way to deal with some of those past issues. EMDR, another really great therapy for women, one of my favorites. Help women put things in place, because certainly it contributes to bad eating patterns. And again, then we talk about obesity, and it really changes our hormone imbalance. And women are in a really kind of a vicious pattern. When we talk about the psyche, and then we talk about the body, and we talk about being holistic, that does include the whole body.
Yeah. I love the holistic approach to healing, because we are connected as a mind and body. And a lot of people believe that this is just an ovary issue, but really the changes are happening in your brain, like I talked about earlier. And so addressing that, but also taking a moment to just be true to yourself and addressing the pains that you have. Because, growing up, I used to think a lot of the older women, like some people might have the image of a nice, sweet grandma that bakes cookies and so loving and so kind. But I didn't have that experience with older women. I had the experience of a very angry, bitter older woman. And I always wondered why. And looking back on it, I realized that these women had very difficult lives up until menopause. And then it just kept getting worse because it was never addressed. And then finally, when they're older, they're like, I don't care anymore. I'm going to speak my mind. I'm going to be as mean as I want. I'm going to be as angry as I want, because I don't have another outlet. but we can avoid becoming like that if we just take the time to take care of our mental health and focus on healing those past wounds so it doesn't carry us into this, like you said, other half of our life, basically.
Absolutely. And it's hard for women to take that time for themselves. And then always the issue of money or financial, spending that money for themselves on either medication or alternative therapies. But on the flip side, their lives are so much better. Women got to understand that they are worth that little bit of money and that time. Nothing's going to fall apart the way they think it is.
Right.
But they've got to do this for themselves. They're so worth it.
Well, at the minimum, you can journal and just at least be honest with yourself and have a place to go to be completely honest and get rid of all the rage and anger that you've been carrying by putting it in your journal. That might be a great start. Vitamins play a huge role, making sure you're getting good food quality, high food quality vitamins, fish oil, omega-3s for your brain, reducing the junk food, reducing a diet filled with ultra processed foods. All of that contributes to our mental health, whether we're in menopause or not. I mean, I'm big on saying all that for anybody that's struggling with anxiety or depression, but we need it more than ever. If we don't have the money to invest in bioidentical hormones or talking to somebody, focus on just changing your diet and nutrition and giving yourself the nurturing and the nutrients that your body needs in order to function during this really difficult transition.
Absolutely. And other things that I talk about when I'm educating my patients and working with them, we talk about supplements that you can use. There's some great supplements. Certainly every woman has got to take their vitamin D3, but you've got to have calcium to absorb the vitamin D3. And people are unaware of that. But certainly there's great other supplements, Vitex, and there's so many, that it's worth delving into. And you can certainly, again, educate yourself by going to NAMS, but you can educate yourself by just looking at some of those books, and some of those authors and doctors you mentioned have some great information. Having the internet is such a blessing in our time that we can get such great information.
Yes, and the book that I got from Dr. Lisa Mosconi, I got from the library for free. You can just check it out in the library. Yeah. You can watch a lot of Dr. Marie Claire Haver has a ton of videos on YouTube that she shares. So there's stuff that we can do to educate ourselves. It's no longer in my 20s when I was going through all of this. I didn't have a lot of information. So I just focused on as much alternative medicine as possible. Acupuncture was a lifesaver for me. Massage was a lifesaver. I invested a ton of money in herbs and supplements that helped me balance out my hormones. But Vitex you can get a bottle for under $10 from Sprouts.
Yes.
And that helps a lot of women during childbearing years, and then also as perimenopause and menopause as well.
This is true. Black cohosh, soy, a lot of variable things, for sure. And sometimes if you're not one of those patients who meet the criteria to be able to use hormones, again, using those things, supplements, collagen, peptides, things like that. Like you said, you can get very inexpensive, but certainly offer your body the things that it needs. And it's good to hear.
And exercise, weight-bearing exercise, lifting weights, doing squats, doing things that help your bones and your muscles, because we lose so much muscle as we get older. And we're going to need that. Like I always think about every time I have this huge, what are those mixers? I forget the name of those big red mixers. I forget the name right now. Talk about anyway, it's up in a shelf, and every time I pull that down, it's so heavy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to do this in 10 years? That motivates me to lift weights. That motivates me to be able to pick something up and put something back up, or pick bags up, because in 10, 20, 30 years, I might not be able to do that if I don't continue to maintain my muscles.
Right. And just like you said, you can see that right on you can see that on your phone and on your computer. There are free little classes that you can take. They're just 10 minutes, and sometimes 10 minutes of weight-bearing exercise. That is worth it. That's going to benefit you. Doing some walking at a vigorous pace, giving yourself 15 minutes of peace and quiet, doing an audiobook at the same time, beneficial to you.
Yeah. I mean, YouTube, free videos. I just did a free arm exercise on YouTube. So it's not about money. It's about what you're willing to spend it on. Like for me, spending money on my health and my wellness is better. I feel better about spending it there than on an expensive purse. That's just my thing.
Absolutely. Or in the future, spending that on drugs, hospitalization, a lot of clinic visits for your high blood pressure, other issues, diabetes, those things that affect us when we don't take care of ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
It can get very expensive later on if you don't if you're not proactive now.
That's right. Being proactive is absolutely the way to go.
And you mentioned dementia and Alzheimer's, and one of the biggest issues, like now they're saying that dementia and Alzheimer's is a type 3 diabetes, which means it's caused by inflammation of your brain, which is, again, lifestyle and diet. It can be prevented, but a lot of us, it can show up, it can start 50 years before it shows up.
Yes, this is true.
We can make these decisions on what we're doing with our bodies. So if we're in our 30s and we don't want to have Alzheimer's in our 80s, we need to make those changes in our 30s and our 20s so that we end up having a healthier brain later on.
Right. And, a lot of people, when they come to me, they haven't heard of it. It affects women more than men, has a lot to do with our diet, a lot of sugars and carbs. It's different than type 1 and type 2. A really good thing to educate yourself on, that's called type 3 diabetes, or type 3 diabetes / dementia. Certainly something to look at. And I would encourage everyone here that's listening just to take a look at that, read a little bit about that. Actually, vitamin D3 is a big treatment for that. So again, another reason I encourage women to take vitamin D3. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I have patients that are in their late 70s and 80s, and it shocks me that the doctors never tell them about changing their diet and the way that their breakfast is just all pancakes and orange juice. And the worst way to start your day, but they're never told about making sure they're getting protein, good carbs, healthy fats. And the focus is not on supplementation. It's not on about eating brain foods. It's all about, okay, you have a problem with that, here's a pill. And it's so important that we educate ourselves so we don't end up with a bag full of pills in our 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Right. Our medical system has changed so much, and a lot has to do with insurance and reimbursement, and physicians are expected to see a lot of patients per day to make that money. And it's easier to say and faster to say, take this pill versus let me show you an alternative way. If you eat this and this and this, things will change for you and you won't need this pill at all. And that's sad. Also, you certainly can go to the American Diabetes Association website. All kinds of free information, helps you get on the right track, shows you recipes and activities. The American Heart Association, another free website that offers all kinds of things so that you don't even have to think about what to do. It will just show you what to do every day. But I love that it has the recipes so you don't have to make up stuff every day and try to figure out what should I eat today.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to have cereal and traditional breakfast foods for breakfast, which is funny that people think you can have salmon for breakfast. That's a great alternative.
It's a great alternative. It's fatty. It's great for your brain. Your brain loves it. Your gut loves it. And so the thing that's shocking, and I think it shocked me when I first heard this, because we hear about cancer so much, breast cancer, breast cancer, breast cancer. A lot of women are so afraid of breast cancer. But like you said, more women die from heart disease than any other disease.
Yep. It's the number one killer of women, heart attack. Yeah. And it's very often misdiagnosed and missed, which is likely the reason why so many women die from it. Again, they are often misdiagnosed with anxiety. You're having a panic attack because they do often present a little differently than men when they go to the hospital. Sometimes it's difficult for them to articulate exactly what they're feeling. And are often sent home. And sadly, that is when it happens. And again, if we can just get them to understand you've got to maintain this healthy diet, exercise, and normal weight. No one's expected to always be 140 pounds. That's certainly not it. And it's difficult in this environment right now when we're trying to be body positive and encourage women, but yet educate women the dangers of obesity.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I tell my patients just even getting some early morning light and walking around the block, 10 minutes.
At 10 minutes, that's right.
Something calming, soothing, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That is so much for them mentally, physically, emotionally. Sitting down and just closing your eyes and just listening to guided meditation for 10 minutes, 5 minutes even, makes such a difference for people that say, I don't have time for all of this. Doing something soothing forces us because we're not meant to be in this rat race 24 hours a day. We are meant to be in a calm state of mind. We're meant to be bored. We're meant to be quiet. We're meant to have the space, but we don't give ourselves that. And then sleep is so important. So many people, so many women that are going through this transition, they have a hard time sleeping. So instead of working on improving their quality of sleep, they just scroll on their phone or get right back on their phones. And then that disrupts their sleep even more. And that doesn't give their brains and their bodies a chance to do the repair that they need during sleep.
Absolutely. And again, I always revert back to talking about what I do with my own patients. We talk about a sleep hygiene pattern. And there's a lot of information, again, on the internet talking about how to do sleep hygiene. But melatonin is actually a hormone. And yes, for some people, it does help them sleep. But surprisingly, it is used very often for people who do have psychological disorders because it helps reproduce the dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, and even oxytocin for the brain. So it acts like a small dose or a soft dose of some of the antidepressants, anti-anxieties. And I think people are shocked to learn that.
I always encourage people to maintain their own melatonin levels because our brain is wired with the setting and the rising of the sun. So as the sun is going down and the melatonin level is peaking, we need to take advantage of that peak between 10 and 2, 10 at night and 2 in the morning, and be asleep because that's when we are getting that rest and repair. But a lot of people think that it's the number of hours of sleep instead of when they're sleeping. Mm-hmm. We need to sleep when our melatonin level in our body is at its peak. And as soon as we turn this phone on and that bright light hits our brain, it thinks it's morning. And so the melatonin levels are not being produced at the same level. So we need to protect our own natural hormone levels and only rely on external supplementation as needed, but for a short period of time, hopefully.
No, you're absolutely right. It's the bright light. And I tell my gals, when you're getting up to the bathroom, it's okay to have a night light for safety and being able to get to the bathroom. But if you're able to avoid flipping on the lights, because that does stop your melatonin production. And then those women say to me often that I can't go back to sleep. And they've been awake then from 3 a.m. And it's unfortunate, but they'll say, hey, remember that your melatonin is trying to keep you asleep as soft as you can. Just get up and keep it dark, go to the bathroom, climb back to bed. Do not look at your phone to see if anybody sent you any messages. I tuck back in.
Well, I go further by dimming my. I don't take my phone in the bedroom at all. It's always in the kitchen. So
that's a great idea.
But my alarm clock, it's on the lowest, dimmest light. And I don't even look at it when I wake up in the middle of the night, because when you look at it, then you're like, oh my gosh, it's 2 o'clock. I got to get up at 5 o'clock, and your brain starts kicking in, right?
Right.
But then they also have now these action motivated or activated lights that you put underneath or on the wall that only comes on when you're walking, so you can see where you're going if you're afraid of falling, and then turns off as soon as you're not there anymore, so you're not exposed. But using an eye mask makes a huge difference. I've become a big fan of those lately.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that honestly, I have little lights. Like I'll have my T-shirt over a light because I've got to have it black to get a really good night's sleep. So that's awesome.
Well, now they have these great eye masks that have like a little cup inside.
Yes.
So your eyes don't feel like they're being pressed. And so when you open your eyes, you can still open your eyes without feeling the pressure on your eyelids. But I've used them to help me get, especially if I'm at a hotel where they don't have the blackout curtains or there's a lot of light when I'm traveling. It's made such a difference in the quality of my sleep. But I also monitor my sleep with my Oura Ring. And this, or people that have other devices that can monitor their sleep, it can really give you some insight on how deep you're sleeping, whether you have sleep apnea and you're being woken up frequently by lack of oxygen. All of those things need to be monitored, and for you to kind of get an idea of the quality of your sleep, because that makes such a difference in our brain activity the next day.
Yeah, and it's important to note, we still need you to get to that deep sleep, or what we call REM sleep, so that brain can rest and reproduce its chemicals that it needs to work that very next day. And when we go all day long at high speed, and it gets tired, so reproducing those chemicals through the night is very important.
Yeah, I'm very religious about sleep. It's like I'm so adamant about it with all my patients, because it is the key foundation to better mental health in every area of our life, whether we're going through perimenopause or menopause or not. It affects us, and especially teenagers. I mean, they're so connected 24/7 that they're not giving their brain a chance to rest and repair. We need to prioritize sleep above everything else.
Right. I agree with you 100%. As a midwife, I've delivered near 5,000 babies in my career, and to see so many women in their postpartum period so exhausted and so vulnerable to postpartum depression, and the easiest thing to do was to speak to their spouse or their partners and explain, it's like being a prisoner of war. The first thing they do is not allow them to sleep. Within about 2 or 3 days, they're like Jell-O. You can make them do anything, say anything, and that just made them click. They've got to get sleep. You've got to be able to cope with your emotions and what kind of situations come up. And you do a better job when you've had your sleep.
And I know this isn't related, but the postpartum also has a lot of nutritional deficiencies associated with it. So for people that are going through that, do a blood test, add some supplementation, vitamin D being huge.
Yep.
Essential like fish oils, the omega-3s, those are really important. And magnesium is really important. Multivitamins, iron, a lot of these things are super important for people going through postpartum. So look into that.
Again, just another time that you can balance those hormones, and what a shift at that time. But it seems, as we're talking, when aren't women having hormonal shifts and needing balancing and support?
Yeah, exactly. I heard this a long time ago, and I've always wanted to ask a specialist about this. There's some belief that in some cultures, delaying, like you can have your children at an earlier age, but then having a baby at a later age later on, like let's say you already had a baby in your 20s and 30s, but then in your 40s you have another child, that delays the menopausal symptoms, and it's actually neuroprotective?
That would not be the case.
Really?
Yeah, no, that's not, no.
You haven't found that to be true?
No. Having a baby later in life, really, again, after age 35, more so after 40, is very challenging emotionally physically and mentally for that woman, and lots of complications come with that.
Well, I'm not talking about having your first baby at that age.
I'm second, third, you can have them 10, 12 years apart. It's age related, and what comes with that: severe hypertension, diabetes, stillbirth, those types of things, but does not affect how your menstrual cycle will go, or when you menopause or go into perimenopause. You would already be, because of age 40, you're already in that group. They estimate perimenopause starts as early as your mid-30s.
Yeah, definitely. Because it takes 10 to 15 years before you actually hit menopause.
Right.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, this was such a great conversation. Can you tell me a little bit about where people can find you and where people can connect with you, and a little bit about the business that you have and how you serve people?
Absolutely. So currently I'm at a med spa in Surprise, Arizona. And my patients can currently find me at reevolvemedspa.com. We first have a free consultation where we just talk about how things have changed and how things are not meeting your needs right now, and see what I can do to kind of make the best plan for you. And that may involve medications. It may involve alternative therapies. You can find me by going to the NAMS website. I offer all types of women's care services: wellness visits, hormone therapy, weight management. Intimacy care is another service that I love to offer women. Another issue that's often brought on by menopause or perimenopause. Lots of ways that we can manage that for women.
Do you offer any of these services online, or is it all they have to be in person?
No, many things can be online, absolutely.
What do you think about hyperbaric oxygen chambers as a therapy for women and the brain?
I think you've certainly seen over the past, for a variety of things, that has been very beneficial. I think it's certainly an option and an alternative. And I think potentially we're going to find out that it may be more beneficial than what we see right now. I just don't know that we have enough data. Certainly we know about 10% of the brain is what we're aware of, what we're working with. And 90% of the brain we have no idea about. So we are going to find out more as we delve into that. And those neurologists and persons who continue to study the brain, I think it's going to find out that it's going to be a positive thing on the brain.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for this discussion. I love talking to you.
Yes, I'd love to talk again.
Thank you so much. Wasn't that an amazing conversation with Susan? It's so important that we continue this conversation about menopause and continue to talk to our friends and family members about what we're going through if you are experiencing any of these symptoms. With everything going on, and with like we talked about, with 50% of the population going through this, there should be no shame in addressing the menopausal symptoms that you're going through. And with the fact that a lot of doctors aren't that well educated and trained in the area of menopause, it's so important to educate yourself and talk to other people so that you can help support each other and make this transition as easy as possible. Some of my favorite books one of them was written by Dr. Lisa Mosconi, in The Menopause Brain, and Dr. Mary Claire Haver. She's also written a book called The New Menopause. And so these are two of the books that can really help guide you in understanding more about what your symptoms are and how you can ease some of the struggles that you're having during this transition. This is an exciting opportunity. Going through menopause doesn't have to set you back. In fact, it can help you have the most productive years yet, but you have to understand it and know how to minimize the symptoms, make the transition smoother. So read those two books, and also read The Wisdom of Menopause by Dr. Christian Northrup. We talked about how you can check out some of these books out from the library. So don't allow the cost of the books to stand in your way. You can have free access to these books at your local library. And I would love for you to give me some feedback about this episode. Share your comments below. Let me know if you're experiencing any of these symptoms and what you've done to help you transition or make your transition smoother. If you're listening to this episode on your favorite podcast platform, please be sure to give us a follow and leave us a review. Okay, until next time.